Hi friends, Mrs. Day here with our Read Aloud. Our story today is called When the Monkeys Came Back. And this story is written by Kristen L. Franklin, illustrated by Robert Roth. Now you've already heard this story 2 times. This is the 3rd and final time you're going to hear this story. By now, we should already remember some of the details from the book. Now think back to the monkeys. They do lots of yelling and screaming, hooting and hollering. If you haven't already done so, take some time to Google what sound does a monkey make. See if you can hear it for yourself. You could do that either before we start reading or when we're all finished. All right, buddies, I hope you enjoy our story one last time. When the Monkeys Came Back by Kristen L. Franklin, illustrated by Robert Roth. When Donna Marta was a very little girl, the valley was a peaceful place. Children giggled as they chased each other between rows of tall corn. Fathers whistled as they dug in the gardens. Mothers hummed softly as they wrapped black beans and cornmeal in banana leaves to cook. There was one old road in the valley, but it was an ox cart road, an open place for meeting friends or cousins, a nice place for walking, a sunny place for catching lizards. There weren't any cars at all. The valley was a quiet place, except for when the monkeys called. Every morning and every evening, for as long as anyone could remember, the monkeys announced the changing of night into day, the changing of day into night. At dawn, they would howl and bark to one another, and the noise they made was like thunder in the trees. At dusk, they hooted and screamed, and each leaf and each blade of grass would tremble from the sound. Here are the monkeys. Look how loud they are. One day, a car chugged and sputtered up the old road. After that, more cars came. Not many at first, for the road was an ox cart road, not a car road. Marta was afraid of the cars. The sound and the smell made her hide behind her mother's skirt. More and more cars came, and trucks, and more noise. Before long, it wasn't safe to walk down the middle of the road, or to stand and talk, or to chase the quick lizards. Still, the monkeys shouted from the trees, drowning out all the new day noises for a few moments each day, hooting to one another as they always had, waking up the world in the morning, calling the workers home from the fields at night. So here she is. She's scared of all of the loud noises from the cars. And Mama's face definitely doesn't look happy. I don't think they like the cars. The rains came and went, and Marta's grass grew too short, and one day some men from the city came to Marta's house. They offered her father a lot of money, enough to buy 6 cows and a brand new dress for Marta, and asked to cut down some trees on the side of the mountain. Marta's father agreed, and from that day on, the forest began to disappear. Uh-oh. These men are cutting down the trees, and the forest is getting smaller and smaller. At first, it was just a few trees. The lumbermen cut down only the biggest ones, the ones with the hanging vines. The monkeys didn't seem to mind. They howled and barked and scolded just as before. But 5 years later, when there were only 24 trees left in the forest, the monkeys went away. Okay, let's stop and think. Where do monkeys live? In the trees. And if the men are cutting down the trees, then the monkeys don't have space for their home anymore. They had to go away. I wonder where they went. Marta didn't know where the monkeys went. One night, it was just the sun, and it slipped behind the hills. The monkeys shrieked and hooted and cried, louder than ever before. Some said it was because of the full moon. Others said the rainy season was near. But the next morning, the valley was as silent as a stone. Over the next several years, the last of the trees were cut down. What had once been a forest was now covered with stumps and tangled brush. There were a few birds, but no monkeys. Most people forgot about the monkeys. They had roosters to wake them up in the morning and lamps to work by at night. But Marta didn't forget. So here are the birds and the frogs, but no monkeys. When she was 15 years old, Marta married Emilio. Emilio worked for Marta's father, and when her father died, he left his farm to Marta and Emilio. "You have a lot of land now," said Marta one day. "I would like to have some of it for myself." Emilio laughed out loud, because in those days women did not own their own land. "Soon we will have a family to feed," said Emilio. "After I plant corn and beans and squash, there will be nothing left to give you. The rest of the land belongs to the cows." "What about the land on the side of the mountain?" asked Marta. "There are too many stumps for the garden, and it's too steep for the cows." "That's true," agreed Emilio, and though it went without against the custom, he gave the land on the side of the mountain to Marta. "What are you going to do with your land?" asked Emilio. "I'm going to bring back the forest," said Marta, and that's what she did. Let's pause and look. Here's Marta. What is she doing? She's planting little trees, and soon the trees will grow big and strong. And just like she said, she's going to bring back the forest. Marta planted trees from the foot of the mountain to as far up as she could climb. When the sun baked the ground in the dry season, she hauled buckets of water to the trees. When the harsh rains washed the little trees from the soil, she gently replanted them. They were little tiny trees, and now they're getting bigger. I spy with my little eye. There's something in Marta's bucket, something that a tree needs to grow. What is it? It's water. Year after year, Marta took care of the trees. In the next 15 years, she gave birth to 11 children. Each child learned to plant and tend to the trees. Year after year, Marta's children grew tall, and so did the trees. Coffee grows well on a mountain, Amelia would tease. Maybe you could plant coffee on your land. But Marta didn't listen. She didn't change her mind, and the forest came back. So here she is, Marta and all of her children. And the forest came back. I see the birds and the frogs and the beautiful big trees. But where are the monkeys? Many more years passed. The trees grew higher and higher. Marta's children grew up and had children of their own. Emilio died and he left the farm to Marta and her sons. One day, Donna Marta took a walk along the road in the warm sunshine. The children greeted her as they passed. "Good morning, tree lady," they said. "Good morning," answered Donna Marta with a wink and an old smile. She leaned on her stick and started across the valley. So here she is now. She grew older. And here are the little kids. They call her Tree Lady. Why do they call her Tree Lady? Because she planted the trees. Good memory. Her trees touched the sky. Thick vines wrapped around their trunks. Birds of every color filled their branches. Now, wherever they dropped their seeds, new trees would grow. The valley was bright with squash and corn and beans, but the side of the mountain was a deep, dark forest green. Donna Marta's work was finished. Wow, look at this forest with great big tall trees and birds and frogs and lizards. Look at all these animals. But where are the monkeys? One night, Donna Marta couldn't sleep. As she lay in her bed, she listened to the sounds of the insects and the tweetering of the night birds. Out her window, she watched the stars trail across the black sky. She watched the moon shadows shift and change in her room. As dawn approached, she heard the roosters began to crow, and then she heard another sound. At first, it sounded like the barking of dogs, but soon the barking turned into howling, and the howling turned into shrieks, and the shrieks turned into shouts, and every leaf and every blade of grass trembled with the sound. Donna Marta hobbled to the window and leaned out. The dark air thundered with the sound of monkeys, hooting and hollering, screaming from the treetops, waking up the whole world once again. Donna Marta closed her eyes, smiled a wrinkly smile, and listened to the music she had missed for 56 long years. Who came back? Who was making all of those loud noises? The monkeys. Every morning now, old Donna Marta wakes up to the barking and scolding of the monkeys. Every evening she waits for them to gather in the trees, to shriek and howl and say goodnight. For a few moments each morning and each evening, the sound of the monkeys drowns out all the other sounds in the valley. For a few moments each day, it's as if nothing had ever changed. Here they are, those little monkeys, hooting and hollering, screeching and screaming. And here's Donna Marta. How is she feeling? She planted the trees, and the monkeys came back. I know she's feeling happy because I can see the smile on her face. She's also excited that the monkeys came back. The end.